Have you ever stopped to wonder, truly, what gives a king the right to rule? Or, for that matter, any government? It's a really fundamental question, isn't it? But back in 1776, one, well, short, but electrifying pamphlet just ripped through the American colonies. It totally shifted the conversation, pushing it towards this incredibly daring new idea, independence. Today, we're taking a deep dive into that exact document, Thomas Paine's Common Sense.
Right, and our mission here really is to get inside this amazing pamphlet. We're not just going to skim, what Paine argued. We want to delve into why his words, his style, his powerful ideas resonated so deeply, especially with people who were, let's face it, still pretty loyal to the British Crown back then. He's got a journey into the foundations of government, natural rights, and that whole revolutionary spirit.
Okay, so let's unpack this thing. It was published anonymously January 1776. Hit like a thunderbolt, you said. What was Paine actually trying to achieve? I mean, it seems so audacious, presenting these radical ideas to people so used to monarchy.
Well, Paine himself, he kind of knew his ideas were not yet sufficiently fashionable. That's his own phrase. His genius, I think, was challenging what he called the long habit of not thinking a thing wrong. He felt this habit gave error, a superficial appearance of being right. And he was careful. He said his aim wasn't personal attacks. It was about the doctrine itself, not the man. He truly believed the cause of America is, in a great measure, the cause of all mankind, lifting it way beyond just local issues. And he did it in such plain language, right? Not some dense philosophical text. Ordinary people could grasp it.
Yeah, that accessibility is key. And right at the start, he makes this really critical distinction separating government from society. Wait, what's the core difference he's highlighting there, and why does that matter so much for his whole argument?
Oh, it's crucial. He draws a super sharp line. He says, society is produced by our wants and government by our wickedness. So society is good. It comes from us needing each other, uniting affections, all that positive stuff. But government, that's basically a consequence of our flaws, our wickedness. He famously calls government, even in its best state, but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. It's like a badge of lost innocence. We need it because we mess up. Framing it like that immediately knocks government off its pedestal, doesn't it? Makes it easier to critique.
A necessary evil, a badge of lost innocence. That's pretty stark. Is he saying we'd be better off without it then? Or is there more nuance? He uses that thought experiment, right? About the early settlers.
Yeah, good question. No, he's not an anarchist. He imagines this small group starting out in natural liberty. Their very first thought, he says, is society. They need each other to survive, cooperate. That's natural. But then as they grow, inevitably, the defect of moral virtue creeps in. People start, causing problems. And that's when government becomes necessary, purely for security, for order. He traces this evolution from everyone meeting under a tree, every man by natural right will have a seat, to needing elected representatives. And he really stresses frequent elections. Keep those reps accountable, stop them getting separate interests from the people they represent. So yeah, necessary evil, but one that needs really tight control.
Okay, so given that rather dim view of government, how does he then tackle the English Constitution? I mean, people back then really held it up as this model of liberty. How does Paine break it down?
Oh, he just takes it apart scathingly. He says it's exceedingly complex, and maybe that's deliberate, right, to hide its faults. He famously breaks it down into the base remains of two ancient tyrannies. That's the king and the lords, the monarchy and aristocracy. And these are just sort of compounded with some new republican materials, which is the commons. But he argues those hereditary parts, the king and peers, they contribute nothing towards the freedom of the state. Zero. And the whole idea of checks and balances between them, he calls it farcical and absurdity. Because the king always has this thirst for absolute power. How can you trust that? How can it really be checked?
Wow. Farcical. That's strong. And it even goes further, right? Saying England's freedom isn't actually because of the Constitution.
Exactly. This is fascinating. He says, it is wholly owing to the Constitution of the people, and not to the Constitution of the government, that the crown is not as oppressive in England as in Turkey. Think about that. He's saying liberty doesn't come from documents or systems primarily. It comes from the character of the people, their vigilance, their willingness to stand up. It puts the responsibility squarely on the citizens, not just the structures. That's pretty radical.
Okay, so he's undermined the structure. Then he goes right for the throat. Monarchy itself and hereditary succession. He argues there's no justification, natural or religious. What's his case there?
He starts from first principles. Mankind being originally equals in the order of creation, so this whole king's subject division, it has no truly natural or religious reason. He looks at scripture, points out there were no kings in the early days. It was later that they emerged. And he argues it is the pride of kings which throws mankind into confusion. He even points to Holland, peaceful without a monarch, as proof it's possible. For people steeped in the Bible, claiming God didn't endorse kingship was a huge deal.
And he uses those biblical figures, Gideon and Samuel, really effectively, doesn't he?
Masterfully. He brings up Gideon refusing to be king, telling the people, "The Lord shall rule over you." Direct refusal based on divine authority. Then he goes deep into Samuel's warnings when the Israelites demanded a king like all the other nations. Paine quotes Samuel basically saying, "A king will exploit them. Take your sons for his chariots. Take your daughters, take your property, the tenth of your seed." He paints kingship not just as divinely disapproved, but as a system designed for expense and luxury, as well as the oppression, full of bribery, corruption, and favoritism. It's a devastating critique using their own sacred texts.
So it's religiously wrong, and beyond that, he says it's just impractical. Dumb, even.
Precisely. Hereditary succession, he says, is an insult and imposition on posterity. Because nature itself mocks it, right? Otherwise, she would not so frequently turn it into ridicule by giving mankind an ass for a lion.
Wow, it's such a great line. He means you end up with idiots on the throne. It opens a door to the foolish, the wicked, and the improper. You get monarchs who are ignorant and unfit, sometimes their kids, leading to chaos and infighting. It's just not a sensible way to choose a leader.
And that classic defense that monarchy prevents civil war, he just shreds that too, using England's own history.
Oh yeah, he turns that argument right back on them. Since the Norman conquest, he counts no less than 8 civil wars and 19 rebellions in England. He specifically mentions the Wars of the Roses, decades of bloody conflict over who should be king. Some stability. His conclusion is brutal. Monarchy and succession haven't prevented war, they've laid the world in blood and ashes. Hard to argue with the historical record there. Okay, so the case against monarchy is made. Devastatingly. Then Paine connects it all to the immediate crisis in America. The period of debate is closed, he says. Arms have to decide it. Why is reconciliation totally off the table for him after Lexington and Concord in April 75?
Yeah, for Paine, that date, April 19th, 1775, was the breaking point. Blood had been shed. After that, reconciliation is just a fallacious dream. A dangerous illusion. He tackles that whole parent country idea head on. No, he says, Europe and not England is the parent country of America. People came from all over. And Britain's protection. That was always about interest, not attachment. Pure self-interest. He argues staying tied to Britain just drags America into endless European wars that hurt its trade and make it a pawn. The family tie is a lie that benefits Britain, not America.
Makes sense politically and economically. But he also goes for the gut, doesn't he? How does he use emotion to really ram home the need to separate?
Oh, powerfully. The language becomes incredibly raw. The blood of the slain, the weeping voice of nature cries, "'Tis time to part." You can almost hear it. And he directly challenges the reader, makes it personal. Hath your house been burnt? Hath your property been destroyed before your face? Are your wife and children destitute? Then the knockout punch. If you've suffered that and you can still shake hands with the murderers, then you have the heart of a coward and the spirit of a sycophant. He's saying reconciliation is morally impossible now. Never can true reconcilement grow where wounds of deadly hate have pierced so deep. It's incredibly potent rhetoric.
So, no going back. Reconciliation is out. Paine then pivots, arguing America can actually stand alone. And not just can, but must, right now. Why now?
Yes, the timing is critical. The time hath found us, he declares. It's this perfect moment. He argues America already has the largest body of armed and disciplined men of any power under heaven. They have the manpower. And he makes this really practical case for self-sufficiency, especially naval power. Look, he says, you've got abundant tar, timber, iron, and cordage. It's a natural manufactory for ships. He even does the math. Shows the cost of the British Navy, argues America could build a strong fleet for way less, like a fraction of the cost. It makes independence seem feasible, not just desirable.
And the debt they'd incur fighting for independence, he flips that from a negative to almost a positive, right?
He does. It's brilliant framing. He calls any debt incurred for independence a glorious memento of our virtue. And then he argues pretty radically, no nation ought to be without a debt. Why? Because it acts as a national bond, uniting people in a common purpose. He contrasts spending millions on war for independence, which leaves posterity a settled form of government, with spending millions just to repeal a few bad laws. The former, he says, is cheap at any price. It turns debt into an investment in the future.
Okay, so independence is necessary, possible, and the time is now. What kind of government does Paine actually envision for this new America? Does he offer specifics?
He does offer a framework. He calls for a continental charter, like an American Magna Carta, to secure freedoms, key principles, large and equal representation, frequent elections, always coming back to accountability. He suggests annual assemblies, a rotating presidency chosen by lot from different colonies, specifically to avoid concentrating power or creating a new dynasty, and then his most powerful declaration, "In America, the law is king." End quote away. Such a reversal. For as in absolute governments the king is law, so in free countries the law ought to be king, and there ought to be no other. He even suggests melting down the crown, metaphorically or maybe literally, scattering it among the people, the ultimate symbol of popular sovereignty.
The law is king. That's unforgettable. So what's the biggest promise here? What's the ultimate prize of independence, according to Paine, for America and maybe beyond?
It's this incredibly expansive, optimistic vision. He says, we have it in our power to begin the world over again. Think about that ambition. A situation similar to the present have not happened since the days of Noah until now. It's monumental. He pictures America becoming an asylum for mankind, a refuge, a place where freedom, which he saw as being hunted and expelled from everywhere else, could finally make a stand. It's huge.
What a journey. Reading it, even now you feel the energy. Paine wasn't just making arguments. He was dismantling an entire worldview and building a new one right there on the page, based on natural rights, popular government.
Absolutely. And connecting it to the bigger picture, the impact was just immediate and immense. You said it hit like a thunderbolt, and it did. It wasn't just politicians reading it, it was everywhere. Read aloud in pubs, in homes, passed hand to hand. It really did galvanize public opinion, turning what might have been just a rebellion over taxes into a full-blown fight for, well, universal human rights as he saw them, a catalyst.
And thinking about today, his insistence on focusing on the doctrine itself, not the man, his appeal to reason and principle over just party or influence, that feels incredibly relevant now, doesn't it?
It really does. Which leads you to wonder, doesn't it? In our own time, with so much information, so many strong opinions flying around, often focus on personalities. What would Thomas Paine, the guy who championed common sense and clear thinking, challenge us to look at more critically today? What ingrained beliefs, what long habits of not questioning things might he point to in our own societies and governments? That's definitely something to chew on long after this deep dive.